Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll go ahead and call this regular commission meeting to order for Tuesday, December 23rd. Administrative item, if you have a cell phone with you, please turn it off or put it on vibrate so it doesn't disturb the meeting. First on the agenda, we'll have the invocation by Pastor Dean McNamara from First Baptist Church, and following the invocation, please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this joyous season which we celebrate. We ask, Lord, tonight that you would truly help us to remember that you are the one that brings peace on earth and goodwill towards men. May everything done tonight in this meeting be in accordance with your will. Lord, would you guide and direct each person, each thought, and each action. Lord, we thank you for what you brought to us when you sent the Savior to us. We pray this in his name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for being with us this evening, and for our TV audience as well. Just another note that item number G, you will notice, for those of you who have an agenda with you, it says comments from the public. Public is free to comment at that time on items not listed on the agenda. As we proceed through the agenda, if you have an issue or something you would like to speak about that deals specifically with a particular item that we're discussing at that time, please feel free to come to the podium. We'll give you the opportunity to speak. We'll have our discussions, and you state your name, your address, and then we'll hear you prior to taking any kind of a vote that may be necessary. So, moving along, Commissioners, we have the consent agenda items, the commission meeting minutes from Wednesday, December the 9th, appropriation ordinance AO 14-23 in the amount of $4,854,857.04. Resolution R1499, resolution to approve the purchase of airport liability insurance from Caulfield Insurance Associates in the amount of $1,400 for coverage from January 8th, 2015 to January 8th, 2016. Resolution number R-14-100, a resolution to ratify the sale of 15 acres of property in the industrial park to the Lauren Cook Company. And number 5, action to approve the 2015 cereal malt beverage renewal licenses for Cielito Lindo and Pizza Hut. Commissioners, questions on any of those items? Discussion.
My only comment is I know that I've had discussions through time with commissioners that had a dislike of including things on the consent agenda other than the appropriation ordinance. And my question is, do we want to go ahead and leave these things bundled together, or do we want to stop the practice of bundling them like this? I don't care, but if somebody has a strong opinion on the issue, I think now would be the time to say something.
I think it depends on the item. Last week I would have liked to draw out the deal with James, but other than that, I think it just depends on the issue.
Okay.
My suggestion is if we see something that we like to draw out, we need to make it mention to Cindy.
Very good.
The items that are on here actually are previously addressed issues, and it's just a matter of closing the loop on a lot of these.
Very good.
With the exception of the appropriation ordinance. Number 3, 1499, the insurance. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's on a 3-year cycle. So this is just the next
Yes, and all of these
year's
items,
edition.
3 and 4 had a staff report that would give you any additional information if you needed.
Right. And 14-100, the sale has taken place, and this is just a formal ratification. This is Lauren Cook, the new company that's come to Coffeyville. And then we previously discussed there were 2 cereal malt beverage licenses that had been not turned in by the time the last group
And all the
came in.
paperwork has been received,
All
yes.
paperwork is in, so this is just loop closers.
Exactly.
This is just an effort to streamline.
That's correct, for items that really don't need a lot of discussion, but you always can pull out something and discuss it and approve it separately.
Thank you. I'm good.
Okay, any other issues?
I don't have any issues.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion was made by Commissioner Edwards and seconded by Commissioner Martin to approve the consent agenda as presented. Commissioner Castler.
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Mayor Faulkner.
Aye.
Commissioner Martin.
Aye. Next on the agenda is public hearings, special presentations, and proclamations. First on the list is swearing in of Police Officer Eric Wright. Police Chief Tony Celeste will make comments, and when we're completed, we'll do the honors. Chief.
Thank you. Come on up here. Commissioners, Mr. Mayor, it is my pleasure to introduce Coffeyville's newest police officer, Officer Eric Wright. Eric was born in Omaha, Nebraska, and graduated from Topeka High School, and he has family connections here in Coffeyville. Eric has previous law enforcement experience and graduated from the Kansas Law Enforcement Training Academy in 2013. Eric has spent the last 3 months in the field training program for the Coffeyville Police Department and has successfully completed his training. Eric and his fiancee, Joelle, have 2 children, Caitlin and Eric. Our oath as law enforcement officers is very important to us, and in many respects, the most important things that we do in our careers. We are proud to have Eric here serving our community and would ask the mayor to officially have Eric take his oath of office tonight.
All right. You would please raise your right hand and repeat after me. On my honor, I will never betray my badge, my integrity, my character, or the public trust. I will always have the courage to hold myself and others accountable for our actions. I will always uphold the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Kansas, my community, and the agency I serve. Congratulations, Officer Wright. Do the honors. Chief, would you do the honors, please? All right, congratulations. All right, next on the list, public hearing, FY 2014 budget amendments. Finance Director Stephanie Richardson will make comments, and then after that's over, we'll open up the public hearing portion.
Mayor and Commissioners, it's the end of the year. We take a look at our fiscal year 2014 budget and see if there are any amendments that we're going to need. Before year end, any amendments that we do are due to the county by the end of the year. So this being our last meeting, we'll take a look at these tonight and have our public hearing. There were 7 funds that looked like they would require budget amendments to get through the end of the year. The first being the general fund, and that is mainly associated with the increase in sales tax revenue that we've seen over what we projected when we set the 2014 budget. By state statute, we're required to receipt all of the sales tax funds into the general fund and then disperse it from there. So this budget amendment will allow for the additional amount to be dispersed to those other applicable funds. The airport fund had some unexpected damage during some storms, and so we had some extensive roof repairs. We had some repairs to the large tractor loader control. So a budget amendment was needed in that fund. The USD 445 sales tax fund, typically every year we've budgeted $1 million to distribute from the sales tax to the school for their debt service payments. This year they requested just $1,285,218. The fund balance was sufficient. There were plenty of sales tax funds there to make that drawdown, so we went ahead and approved the distribution.
And 100% of that money goes directly towards debt reduction, correct?
Yes.
Debt retirement, I mean.
Yes. The Veterans Memorial Stadium Fund, this is our operations fund that we maintain. The phone bills and insurance is basically what gets paid through this fund, and then it is reimbursed from the college to the city. Both of those expenditures, the phone bill and the insurance, increased in 2014, and so we're going to need a budget amendment in that fund. The refuse or trash utility fund, at the time we set the budget, we anticipated spending about $100,000 on nuisance cleanups, weed lots, those type of expenditures. After that, the decision was made to allocate more funds towards those efforts, we even including the Coffeyville cleanup campaign. So this budget amendment allows for the additional expenditures that we've had with that effort. The Stormwater Utility Fund, our 2014 through 19 capital improvement plan included some stormwater projects, and with that required a rate increase to be able to do those projects. The Commission approved that rate increase in September. This budget amendment allows us to transfer those additional revenues over into the Depreciation Replacement Fund where we would do those projects from. And finally, the Electric Utility Fund, our power consumption and cost of power, and our transmission service costs have increased during the year, which caused us to reforecast our budget numbers. So this amendment allows for those increased costs within the Electric Utility Fund. Again, the amendments are necessary to comply with the state of Kansas budget laws. We're required to publish a notice of hearing in our official newspaper, so that was done on December 13th in the Coffeyville Journal. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer those. If not, we can go ahead and have the public hearing for public comment.
Questions? Any questions?
Where's the specific amounts that each fund is being?
If you look in the, I don't know if you're looking in the tabs. Under the budget amendments behind the resolution are all of the state budget forms. There's a certificate page and then there's a summary page for
Okay.
each of those.
The insurance and the telephone on the Veterans Memorial Stadium, is that this increase, is that primarily due to insurance funding, or?
Quite a bit of it was insurance, but the telephone bill took an increase as well. And if I remember correctly, we've made adjustments we've changed the system up there to eliminate that billing. But those, like I said, those are expenditures that the college reimburses us back for monthly.
Any other questions?
Why? Well, yeah,
Go ahead.
and this is basically a history question. Why was it set up to where if they're using the phone system and then they're reimbursed us, well, and they're leasing it, It just seems like a lot of money shuffling around for no apparent reason.
That phone was part of our Plexar system here at the city, so it was billed in our bills and allocated a portion to the stadium. But like I said, we've changed that now.
Okay. I don't have any further questions.
Okay. Any other questions then? No, sir. Being none, then we'll go ahead and we'll open this portion to the public, for the public hearing. At this time, if there's any members of the audience that are present with us would like to make comment or ask questions, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and ask your questions. Is there anyone?
Charles Weed, 207 West New. I've got a question about the overall budget. For this last year, did we run in the red or in the black? Meaning, our reserve fund, did it increase over this last year or decrease?
That's two different questions.
Well, the short answer is, by state law, we're not allowed to run in the red. Stephanie?
Right. If we ran in the red, it would affect fund balances, and if you'll remember, earlier this year, we approved a fund balance reserve policy. So we're making efforts to increase those fund balances according to that policy.
Okay. So the fund balance did increase or at least maintain stability?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Is there anyone else with any questions?
That brings me to another question. City's fiscal years ends December 31st, is that correct?
Yes.
Out of all the city departments, did anyone come in under budget?
It's too early to tell at this point because we're still going to have December expenditures
When will we
to
know
come
that?
in. We run usually through the 1st of February, backing those expenditures back into December for anything that would be outstanding that we have purchased or encumbered for this year. So it'll be at least February before we know.
So at the end of February or beginning of February, can you give us a report on which departments came in
Yes.
over, under, or
Mm-hmm.
at budget?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if there's no further questions from public, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing portion at this time. Immediately following on your agenda is resolution number R-14-101, a resolution to certify the FY 2014 budget amendments. Any further discussion before we proceed?
I have none.
Then I move to approve resolution R-14-101 for adoption.
Motion was made by Mayor Faulkner and seconded by Commissioner Martin to approve resolution number R-14-101 for adoption. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards.
Aye.
Commissioner Martin.
Aye.
Mayor Faulkner.
Aye.
Commissioner Castler.
Aye.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Next on the agenda, presentation by the Montgomery County Action Council. Aaron Heckman, Montgomery County Action Council Executive Director, will make comments. Welcome, Aaron.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. Before I start in, thought it would be appropriate and for the sake of time to see if there are any specific questions or anything you all want to hear about specifically or discuss. I can kind of field any questions, anything that you all have been wondering about, or I can kind of start in and talk about what we've been doing since the last meeting when I was here. So essentially, since then, we know with the Amazon closure, the Southwire closure that had been announced prior to that, that has been of our chief concern and what we've been working on. We were thrilled that we were able to announce the Lauren Cook Company coming to Coffeyville last week, and your staff should be all commended that worked on that project for the hard work that they put in. Really went above and beyond to see that project came through. It was touch and go for a while, and they really should be commended for their work on that. We do have a number of other projects in the works, some recruitment, some expansion that we've also been working on. As far as recovery efforts, that's one piece of what we've been meeting with our core recovery group. Essentially, we've identified six areas that we're focusing on. The first was the impact analysis, and we put out a report on the number of workers by community, payroll, that sort of thing previously. The second being the workforce recovery, and to touch on that just a little bit, last week's job fair that was put together by the workforce committee was, I think, very well received. We do have the numbers. 172 job seekers were able to attend that event. Just over 50% of those were residents of Coffeyville, 51.7%, so 89. We did gather from them contact information, including email addresses, so that we can stay in contact with them regarding available opportunities here in Montgomery County. Just a couple other numbers. Independence had 20 attendees, so a little less than 12%. South Coffeyville had 14, just across the border. Cherryville had 10. Caney had 8. So, Montgomery County was well represented there. There were over 50 employers as well in attendance, representing over 2,400 jobs. We have been tracking the available jobs within Montgomery County, and right now we sit at 161 that have been represented between the two job fairs and other companies that have openly expressed hiring needs. So when we look at that impact, we estimated that there were, for Montgomery County residents, right around 518 impacted residents with that closure, for 161 current opportunities to be available, and then add on to that, companies like Lauren Cook coming to town and others that are in the works. We feel we're on a good start to recovery. Obviously a long way to go, but something we're working diligently on. The other recruitment or recovery areas we're focusing on, the next one being tenant recruitment. We have material out, have met with the listing agents on both the Amazon and the Southwire property, so are getting that information out and fielding inquiries about those properties. On the job recovery effort tied to the workforce recovery, that's all about creating jobs. If it's with an existing employer, if it's with another company coming into a completely unrelated building to Amazon or Southwire, we're continuing to work on that. And then we have a team working on communications, being sure that press releases go out and that sort of thing, and then a team working on funding. As there's actual needs for funding identified, that group will be able to address those. So, since the Amazon project itself, not just the announcement, but the project came up, a lot of my time has been spent here in Coffeyville. I know the last time I was here in July, just through the end of June, for Coffeyville had been about 13% of my time had been dedicated specifically to Coffeyville. And now, year to date, almost through the end of the year, it's up to 27% of total. So, because of these issues, we've definitely refocused a lot of our efforts here to Coffeyville and continue to do so, and will do so, if other communities were affected this way. So, Moving into 2015, we're looking at engaging some consultants to bring in their professional expertise to do things that they do very well and much better than we do. We're looking at things like a new website specifically designed by economic development professionals, looking at some consultants that can come in and lend their expertise on some industrial park development across the county. We're also looking at purchasing software that will allow us to conduct our own fiscal impact and economic modeling of projects moving forward. So some exciting things as far as 2015, and I think a realization that, you know, with our limited time, you know, and resources, there are just some things that, you know, professionals can do a lot better and free us up to do what we do well, which is, I think, be, you know, the boots on the ground out meeting with the local businesses, you know, the recruitment prospects as they come in and that sort of thing. So that's our plan moving forward for 15. Any other questions?
You recently came back from a meeting in Chicago, conference. General public may not be aware of just exactly what that conference, what that meeting was about. Might want to just kind of give them kind of a thumbnail sketch, and then anything that came out of that conference meeting that can be mentioned at this point in time might be appropriate as well.
Yeah, so that conference was put on by the Mid-America Economic Development Council. It was held in Chicago, and it was their annual competitive conference and site selectors forum. We had prepared marketing material and did market the two available properties, the Southwire and Amazon buildings here, to some site selectors and real estate professionals. We're able to get that in front of a number of them. Going into it, we thought, I believed it to be more trade show, you know, where you could get information to them. It was less that and more of an opportunity where the site selectors who do nothing but, you know, work with companies and find the best fit for them. It was an event where they provided a lot of feedback and gave a lot of recommendation and best practices on what communities need to do to be competitive. Right now, I think with the site selectors, just polling the Kansas representatives that were there, we had people from here in Coffeyville, Independence, Parsons, Pittsburgh, Fort Scott, McPherson, I think Topeka, Shawnee. You know, I've got some questions about how many site selector projects end up in the non-metro areas, you know, period. You know, that kind of asks or begs a couple of questions. Is it that, you know, those site selector projects, because they're complex and there are companies willing to pay for that professional service, naturally gravitate towards those areas, or is it because you know, the non-metro areas just aren't being competitive? So that's something I'm going to look into at the state level. And it's something that we're already, as I mentioned, hiring the consultants working to address, because if it is something that is, you know, our lack of competitiveness because we're not, you know, have data and things up to the level that's garnering interest, we need to correct that. I think it's, you know, it's a combination of both. We obviously can always improve, and I think a lot of those projects, you know, are going to go to the large areas. So, but to give ourselves the best chance at something we're going to work on, and we do a number of the things that we're looking at are in a direct response to information we got at that conference. I will say I like our chances as a community when we get to be face to face and actually work with the company, and I think the Lauren Cook situation, you know, really shines a light on that when, you know, they ended up in a facility that originally wasn't what brought them to town. But even though that didn't work and there was other stops along the way that didn't work, once they met, you know, the community, met with business leaders in the community, you know, the organizations that help support business, they made the comment that, they saw for a community this size, Coffeyville was unique to support a business and a manufacturer like themselves, and that's why they stuck through it. They were here through the Amazon announcement. And, for a company, if a company had questions about the community, that's a pretty big, or a pretty easy reason for someone to turn and run if this isn't the community they wanted to be in. So I think that spoke to what our strengths are, and once we get them here, I think we've got a good chance. So some of these the consultant things that they can do are all about getting us that chance to actually interact with these companies one-on-one. So.
Okay, thank you. Any
Any other
questions?
questions?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next on the agenda is resolution number R-14-102, a resolution to approve the FY 2015 Montgomery County Action Council membership and service agreement. Commissioners, questions? Justin? Sir. Any questions? None, then I move to approve resolution number R-14-102 for adoption.
Second?
Motion was made by Mayor Faulkner and seconded by Commissioner Edwards to approve resolution number R-14-102 for adoption. Commissioner Martin.
Aye.
Commissioner Castler.
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Mayor Faulkner.
Aye. Next on the agenda, comments from the public. Public is free to comment on items not listed on the agenda. Public participation is welcome and encouraged for all items on the agenda as the topics are discussed. Please be mindful of others who may also wish to speak and limit your time at the podium appropriately. So is there anyone in the audience who would like to make any comments? Please come to the podium, state your name and address, and let us know what you are here for.
I'm Susie Sprague, live at 209 South Fresno.
Kevin Shockey, I live at 205 South Fresno.
We've been trying to get some answers and help on doing some street work where we live on Fresno 200 and 300 block for about 18 months. One of our people who live on the street, Charlotte Bowman, contacted the city last fall to see if somebody come out and see what condition the street is in and see what could be done. It's deteriorating. It's almost a one-lane street now, to the point where people coming from different directions have to give the right-of-way to somebody else because both cars can't go at the same time. The street's crumbling next to the driveways, which makes it even narrower. We've got a pothole situation where Fresno meets 4th Street. Usually the potholes are fairly well maintained by the city, but when they aren't, if you turn off of 4th Street onto Fresno, there's a dead-end sign that you either have to figure out if you're going to go in the potholes or hit the dead-end sign, because it's not easy to navigate around that. So Charlotte called the city about 18 months ago and talked to Scott Massman, who came out, looked at the street, and agreed that it looked like we needed to do something. So he went back and talked to the then former city manager, who agreed that the street was in pretty bad shape. A couple of days later, Scott came back out with 7 or 8 guys. They surveyed the street. They contacted the other utilities like Atmos and the telephone company. They came out and marked their underground utilities, marked property lines, and then Scott informed Charlotte, that it would probably be May of this year when school was out before they'd be able to get around to do anything. If they couldn't get that soon, then they'd come at the end of the summer. So we waited till September, maybe October of this year, and there was no further contact. So Charlotte contacted the street department again, talked to Tom Osborne this time, and Tom called her back after he talked with the city manager and was informed that the city manager felt like maybe they needed to put funds somewhere else and not work on the street. In the meantime, over all these contacts we had with different people, with Scott and others, we were informed of 2 possible problems for us to be even eligible for any street repairs. One was that they didn't know if South Fresno was even in the city limits. At one time, back when it first was developed, it was called Wabbit Woad. A guy out there named Mr. Shipley bought all these plots of land and eventually sold them individually to people to put houses out there. And at that time, it was a gravel street or a gravel road, and then eventually it got paved by the people who had property there. They paid for the asphalt covering to be put on Wabbit Woad. Then eventually, somewhere along the line, the city took it over and called it Fresno Street. But then we were informed during all this stuff that was going on that we still may not be in the city limits. So Charlotte and I both called the Register of Deeds in Montgomery County and verified that everybody is in the city limits. Then we were told that the guy who originally had owned the property still owned the rights to the street, and that the property would have to be deeded to the city in order for them to come in and do anything to the street, because if they didn't own the street, then we couldn't, you couldn't do anything to somebody's private property. So I think Kevin has something to add at this point about that situation.
My dad bought property from Mr. Shipley in 1973 and built our house on there. He has since retired from Funks and moved down to the Grand Lake. I talked to him tonight. He couldn't be here. My stepmother's in ICU in Tulsa. He's got an abstract that states that Mr. Shipley went to the city and discussed with them about sewer and water. And the city told Mr. Shipley that they needed an easement through there to put sewer and or water in. So he gave the street to the city, and they put sewer and water in. My dad has the abstract that it says it on the abstract, but he can't be with us, so I have no proof of that, just what he has just told me. So that's my input into this.
Can I ask you guys a couple of quick questions?
Yeah.
Are you, when you pay your property taxes, are you paying property taxes on your property to the city of Coffeyville? Well, that settles that issue. Have you seen the city of Coffeyville out there over the years, after you all paid to pave it, or the adjacent landowners at the time paid to pave it, have you seen since that time the city out there clearing the street in the winter when there's snow? Have you seen them filling potholes on that road?
Yes.
Okay. It seems to me very clearly what's happened is at some point in the past, it fell through the cracks from a legal standpoint as far as deeding that driveway over to the city. But it seems to me like by virtue of the fact that we renamed the street, everybody that lives along it pays property taxes to the city, and the fact that we've been clearing the snow and fixing the street, maybe not, clearly not adequately, but we've been doing some maintenance on the street, it kind of sort of seems to me that we need to do whatever we need to do legally to take the driveway into the street, or turn into a street and take it under the city's official auspices and do something with it. I've driven that street, and it's one of the worst ones in town.
If I could back up just for a second, you said Shipley gave the street to the city?
Yes.
Does the city have the documentation to that effect?
I can't answer that question. Perhaps Chuck can.
Chuck Shiva.
We haven't found that documentation. We believed it was in the city. I think it was an oversight half a century ago.
Yeah, it's been over 40 years.
Yeah. And we actually did design for repairs to that street, and then if you'll remember, the city commission said,
yeah,
this issue came up and it was never dedicated to the city, and the city commission said, well, why would we want to spend money on it then? And that was taken away. But the bank, I believe in Cherryville, owns that street basically as part, I think, of an adjacent property. So, you know, it's up to the city commission. If you want to allow them to dedicate or deed that to the city, then it could become a city street. At this point, it's not.
Who, are they willing to do that?
Yeah, the bank is willing.
Without cost.
Yeah.
Right.
But see, they own a house at 204 South Fresno. that has been vacant
I don't know
for
if the
years.
bank even knew when they got that
The house
property
that-
that the street was part of the property.
The house that they own was where Mr. Shipley lived.
Okay, so would this be, the street would be transferred, that piece of real estate would be transferred to the city, or the bank merely provides an easement for us to?
I think we just need
What's
to
the,
acquire
what's the
right-
legal,
right
legal
of way.
side?
Right of way or
Right of way.
dedication of a street to the
Yeah.
public.
We don't want to own the fee simple interest of the real estate. We just want the right of way or the,
Can you look after that, and then
Yes.
can the public services folks finish their work to, the surveying work to see what it's going to take to fix that situation out there, and come back to us with a price estimate?
I have that.
You've already
We
done
have
it.
a bid. That project's still ongoing that
am I
we
gonna fall
pulled
out of
this
my chair?
street out of, yeah. Well, it's $81,154. And that's to overlay the street and to fix drainage issues on the west side of the street, which if we overlay, we're going to compound. So it's to get the drainage to go where it needs
Is
to
that an
go.
overlayable, is even a
Th-
word?
it would
Is that
take-
even
it would take-
overlayable, or does
it
it
would
have to
take
be
some
completely
repairs
replaced?
prior to overlay.
Are we talking about
Definitely.
replaced
I
or-
can't remember if the bid was to totally remove and replace, or
Is
if
it
it
would
was.
it be a full, a regulation 2-lane width road?
I haven't looked at those plans in a while. I'm not sure. It would be as wide as it was,
Kevin, how many people live
I
on that
believe.
block?
I can't.
I'm the politician, I'm supposed to give answers like that.
How many people live on that block?
I believe there's 11.
Is it that many? Oh, God, they're all here? I vote in favor of it.
There's 11 houses that are, people that are actively living in?
Well, and there's one house its address is on 4th Street, but the access to their house is on Fresno.
Bob Bolden's house.
Yes.
Okay.
There's, I can count it up, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about
We're-
11.
We're already removing snow and doing all
I
that
believe we
stuff.
have in the past. I mean, it's a minor street.
We just need
so
to-
it's not a-
Just need to-
Do we have a
They've been paying
consensus
taxes.
to go ahead and proceed with that, commissioners?
I don't have any problem with that, proceeding with fixing it after we get the
After we
legal,
get the right of way.
the legal issue taken care of.
okay.
All right.
T's crossed and all that.
My other question is where does this fall into the street improvement plan? Because isn't it,
It was originally on the list until we ran into this issue.
Okay.
We bid it
okay.
as
Well, we-
one of the streets in the
We
project.
took it off at the same time that we took the street
Northfield.
to nowhere.
Exactly.
Remember that?
Okay.
Northfield from Klein to Ohio.
Which still doesn't go anywhere.
You're right.
So, yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all.
So you're telling me once we do this, I'll need to contact the contractor and make sure he's still good with his bid.
Yes.
But I think we could just add it back to the contract, couldn't we?
I think so.
If not, we'll have to rebid it and go from there.
Kevin, if you can get me a copy of that abstract, that might be helpful.
And my dad told me he had it either in a safety deposit box here or put in, but he's been dealing with my stepmother's health issues for like 9 months now, so.
Y'all, I'm really sorry. The two people that you dealt with from the city over the past year, they're both gone now. And I appreciate that you brought this to our attention, and I apologize that this kind of just seemed to have slipped through the cracks, but I hope that you realize we're trying to get back on track and make it right.
Thank you for your time.
We have a signed petition from everybody who's here on the street. Do you want?
Not
us to
necessary.
continue?
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas, all of you.
Merry
I have-
Christmas, you
I have-
win.
I have one other question on the,
Susie, can I have that document? That might be helpful.
I have one other question.
Sorry, I didn't get you called back.
If we use the bid that's already been given, those prices fluctuate. Am I correct?
That's what I said. I'll have to contract.
Is there a chance that we could get that at a lower price?
Probably only if we pulled it completely out and rebid it, and then it wouldn't be a part of a bigger project. We'd have to delay it and add it to a future project.
Well, it was bid as part of a bigger project.
It was bid as part of a bigger project. Yeah, I think there were 5 streets,
But the price of
including
oil's
Union
gone down
Street.
quite a bit.
Yeah,
So
I
it
don't think it's
seems-
reflected in the asphalt prices yet.
Well, it sure seemed to reflect when it went up.
Yeah, I know.
They never go down as quick, do they?
No, just like jet fuel.
I would defer to your best judgment, but I think if it was able to be gotten out.
And if we're going to add it back, it'll be a change order, I guess, to the existing
Was
contract.
that-
So we'll
was that
bring it
with,
back to you anyway.
Was Boulder one of those that was in the same?
Boulder is the last one right now.
Boulder was the last one. Okay.
There's Union Street, Grant Street, Boulder Street.
All right.
That's right. Fresno and Grandview.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Any other issues? Being none, then we will move on. Under old business, we have ordinance number G-14-05, second reading, and an ordinance to authorize Sunday sales of alcoholic liquor and cereal malt beverage in the original package. There have been no changes since the first reading. Any discussion, commissioners?
We got someone at the podium.
Okay. Mary Wilson approaching the podium.
Yes. I'm Mary Wilson, live at 207 West New. I had some questions about this. Does this include the liquor stores, or are this just, okay, didn't know about that. I know that the ads frequently predict that if you drink the liquors, you'll be very mature and responsible. I don't see that happening, especially when they just barely turn the age where they can buy the liquors and then buy them and they aren't trained. You know, for driver's training and for gun safety, we have things that really prepare the young people on how to do it safely. But I don't see a whole lot about using the liquors. I don't know if that's an oversight on our part or what. I know that there are many people that die in the first year when they start drinking, have legal access to it, and they also injure and kill many other people who are just as innocent as can be. If you have children, look at your children. Do you want somebody on a DUI cross that center line and hurt your kids? I sure don't. I don't know what benefits society will receive, other than you mentioned last time that it would bring in more liquor taxes. It's also going to cost a lot to take care of these people who are injured, and that comes on all the taxpayers. And I want to share one quick story with you. When I was a nurse in Topeka in nursing school, I was a nurse assistant my senior year. And as we made walking rounds, one of the first rooms we went into was a young man who had been drinking and wrecked his car. He had this cerebral fluid coming out of his ears, out of his nose, and he didn't know what was going on. I went down about 3 or 4 more rooms. There was a young man who had lost control of his motorcycle. He had been drinking. He had blacktop just really ground into his skin, and he was using some of the most foul language you ever heard. He, again, had the cerebral fluid coming out of his ears and his nose. Those aren't pretty sights for healthcare professionals to take care of. And I suppose this is one reason that I oppose this. I just don't want to make more liquor available to people. They can get it, and they will get it, but I haven't discovered just why we need to broaden these sales. And any questions you want to ask me? At the time I saw these two patients, I had teenage boys the same age. And it was hard for me to work for the first hour because that was the two patients I was going to be taking care of. I'm sure Commissioner Williams has been involved in some of these terrible accidents as a police officer. And I just don't understand. Are we going to be a facilitator for these young people to go out and destroy their own lives and other people's lives? I don't know, but that's where I'm coming from. Thank you for listening.
Mary, here's my thoughts. Number one, growing up, kids nowadays have the DARE program.
Okay.
That teaches them against drug and alcohol abuse. So nowadays, even when I grew up, I did some DARE. Was probably the same person who's doing it now.
Do all the children attend the
Yes,
DARE
I believe they
program?
do. They just had a DARE graduation not too long ago.
Yeah.
I believe that alcohol doesn't kill people just as much as guns don't kill people. It's a responsibility. And they can go just across the border to get alcohol the same as they can come here. I think that some people have a problem with alcohol on Sunday because it's a church day, and I respect that. But I don't think it's right for the state to take on that as something that we shouldn't have because of the church day, because that's not fair in and of itself. I'm for it just like any other day, and I believe it should be open, and not because of the money, because they're already go ahead and get it somewhere else. I believe in personal responsibility, and you make those choices. And if you don't think you can handle those choices, then you need to have the willpower not to drink. But it's on you, not on us, but on the...
That's where the responsibility is on the person that consumes it. But who's going to take care of them when they're like these two young men that I was taking care of that day, who will have a long, long recovery and maybe be permanently disabled? Is that going to fall on the taxpayers? We have this health care, but I'm not sure it's going to take care of all that.
Well, Mary, this country has a long history of not being able to legislate morality. And in terms of alcohol consumption, prohibition was a perfect example of that. It didn't work. You've given us some very graphic images of the results of overindulgence in alcoholic beverages. And if one could say that the accidents that we see, the accidents that you've described, were the direct result of sales on Sunday, then we might have justification. But it makes no difference whether the alcohol is purchased on Saturday through the following week, excluding Sunday. It's going to be there, and as Commissioner Kastler has pointed out, it's an individual responsibility issue. And for us to take I believe the term in the press is enact nanny laws that say you can or you can't, this is what you can eat, this is what you can drink. It just doesn't work. And we're just trying to level the field in terms of both establishments, different businesses, opportunity to sell, yes, and then yes, there is a component for the additional tax revenue, but that's not the only reason. Again, it's a matter of withdrawing and getting out of the business of telling different businesses what they can and can't do. That's the reason for this ordinance. Now, there is a provision in the state law that if certain number, I believe it's 5%, 5% of the registered voters of the city who voted in the last election,
5% of the people who voted in the last presidential election.
5% of people in the county,
In
in the city,
Coffeyville.
in
In
Coffeyville
Coffeyville.
residents.
It'd be 142.
If 142 residents sign a petition stating their objection to this, then that automatically puts it on the ballot in the spring for a vote by the community at large. In the absence of that petition, those 142 signatures, this would become law on January the 1st?
March the 9th.
March the 9th.
Because
I
there's a
stand corrected.
61-day period for the
Would give a
petition.
61-day period.
It has to be published twice. And then after the second publication, that starts the 60 days. And so March 9th would be the
All
first
right.
day.
What is the deadline for the petition?
Yes, it would be March 8th.
March 8th would be the deadline for the petition. All right. So that's where we are.
I've been approached by 2 of the 4 liquor store owners, and I've spoken indirectly with the other 2, and all 4 of them have no plans of being open or taking advantage of the liquor store aspect of this. And the reason for it is each one of them feels like it would not increase their sales at all. The only thing that they would achieve by being open on Sundays is some of the sales that they currently capture on Saturdays would just come and trickle in the door on Sunday. So they don't anticipate that it would be, for that reason, they don't anticipate wanting to be open. And they have asked me if we would consider removing the liquor stores from the Sunday sales, and then the net effect would be we'd only sell it in the convenience stores, and it'd only be the 3-2 and not the strong stuff. And having spent a lot of years in retail, it would basically cost the liquor stores money to be open on Sundays because they're not going to achieve any increase in sales, but they're going to have to pay a clerk to stand there at the cash register, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours to ring the folks up that are already, in their opinions, coming into their businesses on Saturdays. So that's the contact that I've had. I've had a handful of citizens who have said they're not in favor of it, and for some of the same reasons that you've mentioned. And I've had some citizens come up and say, yeah, that's a great idea. And, so I don't know if it's something that we would want to do to remove the liquor stores from the ordinance, or you guys want to leave it in?
I think that we've already had the first reading, and I think we just need to leave it as it is.
I agree.
Sir?
I know everybody, well, never mind.
If they want to open up, it's open up to them. It's not, then don't.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Anything else? All right, then, hear a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve ordinance G-1405.
Okay. I'll second.
Motion was made by Commissioner Castler and seconded by Mayor Faulkner to approve ordinance number G-14-05 for adoption. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards.
Aye, but I would have preferred removing the liquor stores.
Commissioner Martin.
Aye.
Mayor Faulkner.
Aye.
Commissioner Castler.
Aye.
All right, next on the agenda, resolution number R-14-103, a resolution to execute an engineering services agreement with SEGA for air compliance reporting assistance for the electric utility. Deputy Electric Director Mike Shook will make comments.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Happy holidays. The item I bring before you this evening for your consideration is the annual renewal for an engineering services agreement with SEGA for air compliance reporting services. SEGA has been providing engineering services to assist staff with both KDHE and EPA air compliance programs for the electric utility. SEGA provides 2 environmental engineers on staff to assist in evaluating, directing, and directing the compliance program for the utility, including all of our quarterly and semi-annual reports. It just so happens this year, 2015, we also have for renewal is our acid rain permit that's due, and our Title V with KDHE permit is due for renewal, so SIGA will be assisting with that. Staff recommends that the mayor be authorized to execute a professional services agreement with SIGA for air compliance reporting services for the electric utility. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Have we not been doing these things in-house?
We have. We've had this, I believe it was in place, I'm going to believe 2009. Originally it was over 30,000. If you remember right, serving on the commission, we've reduced it down to $6,000.
Well, but my question was, have we not been conducting these compliance things ourselves?
We have no choice but to do them ourselves. We have them review them before we submit them.
So this is a renewal of a contract with them for these services?
Yes, sir.
Who do they send down here to work with us, or who?
Brian Peterman is one of the engineers' names.
Is it anybody else that used to work for the city?
No, so that's a different one.
Okay.
So we're doing the work in-house, but this is to review the compliance records to make sure everything's correct?
This is for air compliance with the state of Kansas and the EPA. I believe the item that you're referring to is with Southwest Power Pool and NERC reporting.
Now, this is the clean air portion we're
Yes,
looking at.
yes, Mayor, it is.
Once upon a time, Mayor, and this goes back several years.
Yes.
We had some problems getting reports timely filed, I believe was the problem. And
Prior to me.
Yeah, it's prior to, I mean, this was like 10 or 12 years ago.
Yeah.
It goes back several years. So I think at that time, the city elected to engage this company to just assist the city to make sure we got our reports timely filed. I think we paid some modest fines because of the failure to file.
There was a consent order issued by the state of Kansas back when this all happened. Yeah.
This is sort of a safety net.
Okay. Any questions?
Move to approve
I don't have any.
Okay.
Move
Go
to
ahead.
approve resolution number R-14-103 for adoption.
Second.
Motion was made by Commissioner Edwards and seconded by Commissioner Martin to approve resolution number R-14-103 for adoption. Commissioner Edwards.
Aye.
Commissioner Martin.
Aye.
Mayor Faulkner.
Aye.
Commissioner Castler.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Next is resolution number R-14-104, a resolution to purchase dispatch equipment for the police department. Police Chief Tony Celeste will make comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. This request is for the authority of city staff to add and improve and upgrade equipment within our emergency communications dispatch center, including the Max Pro dispatch IP console and all the necessary equipment that goes along with this. This proposal would allow for two dispatch workstations and integration with the Independence Police Department if we were to choose. As we prepare for the next generation 911 system, city staff recommends that we no longer defer our upgrades and improvements and make these improvements to our system, including upgrading to an IP-based console system. This request would be to use 911 funds that are tax funds collected from telephone service users and dedicated to certain expenditures for 911 operations. City staff had difficulty obtaining multiple bids, as this specific product is only authorized to be sold by vendors approved from the manufacturer. I contacted the manufacturer directly, Zetron, who provided me a list of 2 authorized vendors in our region. These vendors were Action Communication, based out of Bartlesville, Oklahoma, and KCOM, based out of Salina, Kansas. We received a bid from Action Communication in the amount of $59,445, and their proposal included the purchase of the equipment through a cooperative purchase agreement. We did also receive a bid from KCOM in the amount of $84,510. The additional cost in this request was for other peripheral equipment, including base radio stations that we would need regardless of the vendor selected. We contacted other Zetron vendors outside of our region, but were not able to receive any further quotes on the Max Pro system. We did receive one quote from Procom LMR based out of Hayesville, Kansas. Their proposal was for a different IP console system, Bosch Telex dispatch system, and their quote was comparable to Action's, however did not include installation cost. And this product was not listed on the state of Kansas procurement list. Staff prefer the features of the Max Pro system over the Bosch Telex system, including the ability to link to the IPD dispatch system. Staff recommends approval of this purchase and installation. If commission remembers, I had made this recommendation of this proposal a couple meetings ago, and there was questions about the procurement process. I hope that I answered that in the staff report, but would certainly be happy to answer any questions that I could.
Chief, I kind of, as I was reading through the detail on this, it kind of took me back to my previous life where I was involved in government budgeting, and it reminded me of the old authorization appropriation issue. From an authorization standpoint, it would appear that since there's been no collective movement within the county to proceed with the county-wide 911, we've decided we've got to get on board with the next generation, be prepared for the next generation of equipment, least of which is with a cell phone, it will identify where you are instead of picking up the number and routing you through 14 towers. So I understand that. So from a need standpoint, I think the argument can be made, yes, we need to proceed with this. However, from the appropriation standpoint, I'm looking at the flip side and thinking, is this not premature in terms of going ahead and actually purchasing the equipment because of the police department's current location, and we're still waiting on recommendations from the Blue Ribbon panel. There are a lot of factors in play here.
Certainly.
So, is this equipment that would be hardwired? Can it be moved once it's installed? What's the physical aspects of the equipment itself, and how much additional expense would there be involved if we said go ahead and put it in your current location, and then when the police department moves into its new digs, you have to move it again?
Certainly.
So, what's that piece of it? Explain that to us.
Certainly. Well, this is for the dispatch console system, and which is separate than the 911 equipment. The benefit of this system is that we certainly can move it. It's basically a computer, and then the peripheral equipment that goes to connecting the computer to the radios. And so the equipment certainly can be moved and certainly will be moved. There'll certainly be some expense in moving it later down the road, but we've deferred cost on our equipment and our console for quite a long time, kind of waiting and see if there's any change in the 911 system in the county. It doesn't appear that there's going to be anytime soon any type of consolidation of dispatch or 911 services in the county. So we felt now was the time to move forward. The equipment, again, the benefit to that is if next year consolidation talks come up again and consolidation happens, this equipment is already compatible and is the exact same equipment that IPD is currently using. It's the same equipment that the sheriff's office is looking at going to as well. So we felt there was definitely interoperability there should the situation change in the future. And then also the big cost will be with the 911 equipment once next generation comes in. And there's a lot of details there, but supposedly next generation is going to reduce all our racks of 911 equipment down to essentially an IP switch and a router, which will make it much easier to move and handle and service. So it looks like there's definitely some good possibilities with next generation 911, but wherever we move to, we're going to be moving equipment. So it's a matter of when we move, how long we should continue to defer the upgrades. But long story short, we felt now is the time to start making these upgrades.
Questions?
I don't have any questions.
Any comments from your professional expertise?
I think you got additional bids, and we found out that it was more expensive, so I think we did everything we could do to
And we tried extensively
cover
to
all our
get
bases.
as many bids as we could, and this is kind of almost like a sole source purchase. It's just very difficult with this type of equipment because the manufacturer only allows certain vendors to sell it. And so it's difficult to get a lot of bids on these type of products, but we felt like we got the best bid and the best price we could through that cooperative purchase agreement.
All right. Any further questions?
No, sir.
Then I move to approve resolution number R-14-104 for adoption.
Second.
Motion was made by Mayor Faulkner and seconded by Commissioner Martin to approve resolution number R-14-104 for adoption. Commissioner Edwards.
Aye.
Mayor Faulkner.
Aye.
Commissioner Castler.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Martin.
Aye.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next on the list, resolution number R-14-105, resolution to purchase workers' compensation insurance coverage from January 1st, 2015 through December 31st, 2015. Human Resources Officer Marilyn Everson will make comments. Marilyn?
Mayor and Commissioners, in 2013, the city joined CARET, which is Kansas Eastern Region Insurance Trust, for our workers' compensation coverage. Our membership agreement is for a 3-year term. We have received our renewal for workers' comp for January 1st, 2015 to December 31st of 2015. The premium renewal is $238,786. This is an increase over last year. This increase is due to our higher experience modification factor, which is due primarily to higher losses sustained in 2011 and 2013. Resolution number R-14-105 before you would authorize a purchase order to CARET for this $238,786 for our workers' compensation insurance for the City of Coffeyville employees from January 1st through December 31st. Any questions?
What is the increase? You said that it increased. What's the?
The increase was $69,999.
Staff, where does the increase come from?
Claims.
You mean the reason for the increase?
No, with the funds,
Funds.
budgeted funds.
There are some additional funds budgeted in the personnel line item that can be used for some of that. We also, I don't know, we didn't really talk much about dividends, but we have a potential for dividends coming back potentially this year.
Okay. Is this in the general fund?
This will be divided throughout the funds. It's divided based on where that particular employee
All right.
works. So if it's an electric lineman, it will come out of the electric fund. So it's divided among the different funds.
All right. The $500,000 plus, 536,000 deferment that we are not going to have to pay Amazon as a result of their decision not to request those final payments. Is that money that was allocated and budgeted in the general fund?
That money sits in the electric surplus fund. It originated from the electric utility fund and gets transferred to the surplus fund. It's something that could be used if you so determined to do that. I would recommend leaving it in the electric surplus fund, but
Bottom line, there's funds available,
yes,
so there's no additional burden.
correct.
All right.
That's
All
what
right.
I'm going to say. I don't know that you've really got to.
We don't really have a choice, just the question is where are we going to, where's the money coming from?
Yeah.
All right. Bottom line, we do have the money to do it.
Yes.
All right, okay. Any other questions?
And should our claims go back to normal, as we hope they will, these premiums will start to recede.
Correct. We're already seeing a correction in 2014, so.
All right, then. I move to approve resolution number R-14- pardon?
We get a question from the public on that?
Please come to the podium.
Jim Taylor Jr., 608 Willow. I'd like to hear a little bit about the rating, the mod factor. Just curious to know about what that was. Somebody asked why, and of that, why did it go up? I'd just like to hear a little bit from Marilyn on that. About the mod factor.
An experience modification factor is assigned basically due to frequency and severity of accidents and the dollar amounts that are associated with them. When you have a claim, they assess, what they think the medical will be, and they set aside reserves for any kind of settlement for either temporary or permanent partial disability. So that's kind of where the numbers come from. We had been enjoying a low experience modification factor. They used 3 years of loss ratios to calculate what our experience mod will be. We had been at a 0.81. This year we went to a 1.1, which basically means that we're paying a 10% penalty for our higher claims. Our loss ratios are high.
What about, is there a report on those accidents or those issues?
Those are personnel issues, aren't they?
I mean, can we get
I don't think that you can get into. I don't think that you can get into specifics on the accidents because you get into
the medical.
HIPAA.
You get into medical stuff, and it's all covered by the HIPAA.
can we
You can get a broad account of what the major issues are, but as far as too many specifics, I don't think that we can legally go into that many specifics because we would violate someone's rights as far as their medical. Help me out, Paul.
Well, it's HIPAA.
Private
Privacy.
information.
Right.
Private health.
So is there a report on what the accidents were and why they happened?
I think that is,
I think, again, that's covered under privacy issues, is it, Paul?
Well,
as long as you don't name specific people.
yeah, I'd be careful about just giving too many details.
Right.
Because we live in a small town and people are going to know who we're talking about. So, can certainly give numbers, but as far as details about the incidents.
We'd want to look at why they happened, and the city management would want to know, as a business would want to know, how we preventing them. I mean, this is a big issue.
We have a safety committee that addresses those issues.
I'd like to see what the safety committee has to say about it. And I'd like to look at it if I can.
Is that, would that be covered under internal memos, not available to the public, or is that under a
Yeah, I mean,
privacy
those
issue?
are personnel matters.
Is it personnel matters?
No need names.
Yeah.
All I'm wondering is, if I was a commissioner, I'd like to look at that.
Well, the commissioners have been given that information.
Well, I was going to say, you shouldn't presuppose that we haven't looked at some of this information. I had over an hour-long discussion with her in her office the other day about, why our issues, why our price is going up, and historically we've enjoyed a very good rating. But as you know, in your line of work, I mean, I just saw on the news you had a horrible accident in your company. These things just happen, and at that point you have an assessment. Are we doing everything that we can do to be safe? And you try to make sure if there's any lessons to be learned that you learn them. And I've asked these questions, and as Chief Grimmett said, we have a safety committee that is constantly reviewing our policies and procedures, and we get good information and feedback from those folks, as well as our employees and our professional staff. And it stings when you have an accident that really hits you in the pocketbook. But yeah, we're not in a situation where we're taking a heavy hit in the pocketbook and not, not looking to see if there are lessons that can be learned, procedures that can be put in place to make things more safe to avoid issues. In this particular instance, I can't see that there was anything that could have been done differently.
Well, and that's one of the things that the department heads look at. When the accident happens, the forms are filled out, and we want to know why it happened and what could have been done to prevent it.
Yet was it preventable?
Right.
Yes.
And what can we do in the future to prevent it?
Every accident in our city, we do an accident investigation on, and we're looking at the root cause analysis. Did something fail? Did a procedure fail? A piece of equipment fail? These are all the items that we take a long, hard look at. We don't want anyone to get hurt, and so we take this very seriously. Our department heads have to sign off that they've looked at it. They make any recommendations for procedure changes, so.
I think a lot of this was born out of the incident we had many years ago at our power plant. Well, we had an explosion there. Guys, when was it? 83, and we had, unfortunately had some fatalities there. And I think at that point, that's when the city really kind of, if I recall correctly, that's when we instituted a safety committee and really started to try to give the employees input from the bottom up about how, things they may see that are unsafe. Of course, you have the staff that, from the upper levels on the org chart can say, well, these are things that we need to be taking care of and be aware of, because they're always looking at the legal issues. And I think there's a lot of good synergy there. This situation here was just an absolute freak accident, and no offense, Mr. Kreitz, but you get attorneys involved and some people out of town that don't pay attention.
I appreciate that. I'm just curious about it.
It's a big increase. It's a big increase. It draws attention.
The one thing I wanted to mention is I think that you said if you were a commissioner, you would want to know the some specifics.
Well, I want to know more, Chris, as a citizen, but.
And that was my point, is that everything's open except for the things that aren't open. And that's the simplest way to put it. Everything's put out there to the public, but there's certain information that we're privy to that we are legally obligated to keep confidential. And I assure you that due diligence has been done.
It looks to me like you could put out a report and be legal about what happened, and, not the person's name, not any personal information, but something.
Sometimes in a small town, if you have an accident in a department and you don't name the names, but the accident is well known, it's not hard to figure out who you're talking about.
And then
I think in this particular instance, it's wise to caution to be cautious, because when it comes to medical information liability, I run into it every single day in my profession. It is really, you can be standing right by the guy and they won't tell you who he is. Well, I'm the one that hauled him in here. They're very.
Okay, enough said. I'm good with it. I'd just like to learn more about that part of it.
Me too.
Move to approve resolution number R-14-105 for adoption. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Second.
Who's second?
I can get it out good enough.
Motion was made by Commissioner Edwards and seconded by Commissioner Kessler to approve resolution number R-14-105 for adoption. Commissioner Martin.
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Mayor Faulkner.
Aye.
Commissioner Kessler.
Aye.
At this time, prior to addressing the next resolution, I would move that we adjourn to executive session for approximately 20 minutes to return following a 10-minute break. And that would put us back 10, 15, 20 at 8:25. And
For what purpose?
And this would be for discussion of non-elected personnel.
Second.
and we will be conducting additional business following that executive session.
Motion was made by Mayor Faulkner and seconded by Commissioner Edwards to adjourn to executive session for discussion of non-elected personnel to reconvene on before 8:25 PM, and that will include a 10-minute break. All in
will.
favor?
Aye.
Okay.